And so what are you saying to yourself in the course of 24 hours? I am in want, I am this, I am that. Change it. Completely change it. And say within yourself, I am happily, blissfully married, if that's my objective in life. Reason denies it, your senses deny it. I am blissfully happy, and sleep as though it were true. I can tell you that story from my own personal experience. It works that way. And when I told the details of how it happened, people saw the means employed, which I certainly didn't manufacture them, not consciously, and judged me harshly for telling the means. But when I found the girl to whom I'm now married, and blissfully happy with her since the day I met her back in 1936, I was completely involved. I wasn't divorced, and in those days in New York City, a divorce was out. It only became legal after the very, very, very wealthy Rockefeller got his outside and then brought pressure to bear on the state to pass a decent, modest, normal, modern law, allowing people who cannot live together to separate and then seek a normal divorce. Prior to that, all divorces were simply collusion. All divorces. You paid someone to find someone, and then they signed these little things. You went before the judge, and they all knew it was collusion anyway. Well, here I am completely involved in marriage, and I want to marry this girl. I met her the very first second I saw her. I said, she doesn't know it, but she's going to be my wife. She doesn't know it yet. And simply, I slept as though we were blissfully happy. She on that bed, and I on my bed. It wasn't a sex act. It was simply, she was there in the room, in our lovely home, and I was in my bed and she was on her bed. So I didn't make it an emotional thing of that nature. And the girl, who was my former wife, who refused, she even left the state so as not to be given a summons. And one day I got a call from the court telling me to come on down. They needed my advice. I went down to the court wondering, what am I doing going to the court in the morning? When they brought her in. And I pleaded her case before these three judges. And she said to me after I got her off, that was a very decent thing for you to do, Neville. And I know you want a divorce. Give me the papers. I didn't have the papers on me. And she and I got into a taxi and rode to my hotel, and I gave her the papers. Now, that's supposed to be illegal, so I'm told now. You can't serve your own papers. I didn't know that. Give her the papers. And I got my divorce in the city of New York. So I know it works. It took me 1 week to do it. That's all that it took me, 1 week. I simply went sound asleep in the assumption that my wife was there. And it's the girl to whom I'm now married and who bore us this glorious daughter. And it's been since 1936. So here, this heavenly state was denied me because I wasn't feeding myself the right food. I have food you know not of, and the food are words. And you repeat them within yourself. What am I saying? As Blake said, oh, what have I said? What have I done? Oh, all-powerful human words. What have I said? What have I done? Oh, all-powerful human words. If man only realized what he is doing when he is talking seemingly idly. So after all, who cares? Who knows? Who knows? The only one that cares knows. And he is your own wonderful human imagination. That is God. Now, as you're seated here, that's all about you. Your own wonderful human imagination is the God of the universe. Is it really true? Well, you're called upon to test it. Test it and see if it's true. Now, I have a letter on me tonight. I really should read it, but I'm not going to. But I'll tell you the contents of the letter. He said, I must tell you this story. It may not make sense, for it's the first time that I have ever used my training according to the things that I have heard you say. I am a psychologist, and I have wasted years trying to talk people out of their mental problems when I could easily have imagined them whole and happy. Now, here is the story. He said, a friend of mine, this lady, claimed that she was in many ways abnormal. She and her husband adopted a little baby girl, and something very strange went wrong with the child. The child was 4 years old and still could not speak, and the few words it muttered, it garbled so that it is simply not intelligible. But in the 4 years talking to her, there was progress. Then one day she said to me, I do not feel any longer that I am abnormal. So now I say to myself, I am not abnormal. So I reconstructed a sentence for this lady. And I said, no longer must you say, I am not abnormal. You must now begin to say, I am perfectly normal. She said, I do not feel that. He said, I do not care whether you feel it or not. You must begin to persuade yourself that you are perfectly normal by repeating within yourself, I am perfectly normal. The day she began it, the child went into a coma. So profound was the sleep that it was difficult to rouse her. She could not be awakened. She asked me to examine the child. I said, no, take her to a medical clinic and have them examine the child. But as she began, from his suggestion, to assume I am perfectly normal, within 24 hours the child awoke. They made the test in the medical center and found her alert and bright. She was only the outpictured statement of that mother who adopted her. The mother began to feel, I am abnormal. So she adopts a little child, a little girl. And the girl for 4 years couldn't talk. And when she began, it was so garbled, it made no sense. She only bore witness to that strange, peculiar claim of the mother who adopted her. And when she changed the pattern of speech within her and said, I am perfectly normal, the child, by the medical clinic, found her not only alert, but perfectly healthy and returning to a normal state in this world. The whole vast world is yourself pushed out. All that you behold, though it appears without, it is within, in your own wonderful human imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. We are the only beings to whom he gave speech. He actually became man. And this inner speech is a marvelous gift. And you can't stop it. You're doing it morning, noon, and night. You go to bed talking to yourself. You wake in the morning talking to yourself. And whether there's someone present or not, you're still talking to yourself. You walk the street. Some are obvious when they do it, but most of us are not that obvious, but we're doing it anyway. We're carrying on little mental conversations with ourselves. But what are we carrying on? Arguments? Or are we boldly affirming and asserting that I am? And then name what I want to be. In her case, he gave her what she should say. And she argued with him, and she couldn't say it because I do not feel that yet. Don't wait to feel it, he said to her. Do it now. I am perfectly normal, because if you say I am not abnormal, That's not a creative thing towards your goal. In fact, it may be destructive. You want something positive, not something negative. I am not abnormal. I am perfectly normal. Then the child, the outpictured self. So everyone in your world is yourself pushed out. Blame no one. Don't even blame yourself. Just change the diet. They only reflect what you have been doing and maybe still doing. And when you see it, you change the diet. And the diet is simply words, all within you. So you assume that you are now the man, the woman that you want to be. Walk in that assumption as though it were true. Live in it just as though it is true. And then, who knows, that diet may not take more than 24 hours. I'm quite sure it would not take more than a few weeks to project itself in a way that you do not know.